Hello once again, people! So now we have made it to episode 3, Descent into Horror. It's a 5-part episode for Quake, much like episode 2 was. And this one is made by Gregory McMartin, the entire episode. The important thing to note about this one is that this is probably the only part of Aftershock that is credited outside of some standalone levels. Um, and as such, it's probably the most professional thing that we have seen with actual credit information. As such, it therefore takes a very significant role as being pretty much the most professional thing we have seen, and as basically the end all be all for like one of the people that's around in the industry to this day. He made Raditz back in the day, which I believe was made by Epic Mega Games, I want to say. I might be wrong on that, but I believe he was actually with Epic at the very beginning. And yeah, he basically, Gregory McMartin is a pretty significant person in the gaming community just for that one game or so. And he made this episode for Quake. So you wouldn't say he's like the most known person or so. He isn't no John Romero, but at the same time, he has had his place throughout the entire industry. He's been responsible for various games over the years, having different direction on certain ones. I think he did like the first 2 Harry Potter games, and he's done little random things over the years that have definitely kept him relevant. And therefore, he definitely has a lot more of like a significant role than most other people we have seen, especially since most of these other people generally were just people who posted online or some randoms. Then again, really, we haven't seen many of that either. In fact, we haven't seen anyone who really had any credits at all besides Dark Hour, where pretty much everyone we couldn't really get any information on besides the fact that they were part of that team. Um, and really, the only other person we could talk about is Jim Lowell. And Jim Lowell made one level at the very beginning, and he made Thread, but then he kind of disappeared. So he just doesn't have as much attribution to the contribution of everything as much as, say, Gregory A. McMartin did. Especially because Gregory A. McMartin did not just design the 3rd episode, but he was also responsible for all the textures that we have seen throughout the entirety of Aftershock. Every single texture on all the walls that we've seen through the entire game was basically made by Gregory A. McMartin. So, in a way, you could definitely say that the visual atmosphere we've seen through this entire pack is pretty much responsible due to Gregory A. McMartin. And therefore, it's pretty much, design-wise, his beast a little bit. And therefore, it's kind of significant that he basically created this 3rd episode, the final episode of the trilogy. And as such, like I said, it definitely stands out. It stands out more because not only did he do all that, but then he also wrote a document basically crediting himself and basically talking about each level. This is something that didn't exist anywhere in Q2 at all. Dark Hour had little blurbs, but it was really like one-liner things, and really it was like one-sentence statements to kind of go along with it. And even Aftershock, the first 2 episodes, we didn't really get any information at all about them. The only readme we really have is one for the deathmatch stuff, made by Gregory McMartin at least, and his descent into horror. So yes, Gregory McMartin is probably the only person that we have seen to really have the oversight to write all this info out, because it will serve as some reflection in the future to look at and be something that you can say he designed and one, credit him, two, recognize it as him and give him more of an identity. It definitely makes him more memorable because of all the stuff he's done. it definitely means that, like on the Wiki or whatnot, he's definitely a person that's pretty recognizable to as editors, at least among the main admins. And definitely it makes sense because of the stuff he's done. So, with all that in mind, Gregory McMartin designed, these episodes, and then so many years later, he also recorded them and put them on YouTube. So this isn't the first time we have actually like Aftershock on YouTube. There was the first time for Dark Hour in Q2. I think like Dark Hour maybe had 1 or 2 levels like thrown randomly around, but we never had like a consistent full out Dark Hour playthrough. And the same thing can be kind of said for Q2. There was nothing at all on Q2 anywhere, besides before I started playing it. Now we have 2 different versions, both made by me on both of them. And now we're doing something similar for Aftershock, but Aftershock does have some more coverage. One YouTuber already kind of covered the entirety of the main campaign. He didn't cover any of the standalone levels. As I kind of said at the beginning, most people probably know the main thing exists, but then don't realize that there are standalone levels on the same pack. So because a lot of people probably missed out on that, and therefore it's going to be covering new ground for a lot of people. And beyond that, really, like I said, Gregory McMartin also covered his own levels and basically made videos for each one of them, and also wrote out some details describing them. So therefore, it's pretty nice because you want like information, you get it straight from the horse's mouth. The only way it could have been better is if he actually gave commentary on them. That would have been even nicer. But honestly, what he did was pretty nice, and definitely a nice thing to see. When most developers out there pretty much just let their stuff go up on the internet and then disappear, and you don't really hear about them. Even the most obscure of WAD designers, I feel would be nice to hear from, and therefore it's very nice when I do hear from somebody who actually made one of these levels, because it's something they created, something, their craft or something like that. It was made 20 years ago, and yes, it may be hard to find many of them, but at the same time, when you do, it's a nice feeling because it's something that you've seen them put the effort into to make. For good or bad, it may be the worst level in the world, but the fact of the matter that they put something together and crafted something makes it all worth it just to hear from somebody and honestly have them, comment on exactly, what you've seen or what happened. So, yeah, I think we've actually even talked about in the past how it would be nice if, like, Gregory A. McMartin blended across, some of the stuff, but who knows? I think he's one of the more busy members of, like, the community or whatnot, so I doubt he'd be as likely. I mean, I haven't ever found the people that have not been credited. It'd be nice if we ever found that. It was like someone came out of the woodworks and actually said who they were. Then again, I say that it'd probably be somebody just taking credit that really didn't make the levels, but that's aside the point. That's kind of part of the problem, is that if you don't give yourself credit then, how are we supposed to ever know it was really you? And that's kind of the thing that stinks, and that's why I like that Gregory McMartin did this, and I'm fully happy to have found something that shows this type of lengthy readme. Anyway, let's actually get to this episode, because this episode is pretty involved. Like I said, it's pretty much the main feature, I guess you could say, of the pack, because it's the one made by a guy who made all the textures, so you're going to see a lot of stuff here you didn't see elsewhere, a lot more focus to detail here than you've seen elsewhere, and really, just a very different style. You'll see a lot of his mindset, even. So let's see here. For all potential players of this episode, this is a very difficult episode, and so it is not for Quake novices. And we're going to double that pain by doing shotgun starts. So we're basically taking what he's saying, which is already saying that not to play this if you're a novice at all. This is pretty brutal. and we're going to be trying to actually play this thing while dealing with all this. So this is going to be a pretty interesting maneuver here to see exactly how this all gets accomplished. I definitely wonder how like E3M2 through E3M5 is going to play out, since we don't exactly have any ammo. Then again, we did make it through the last level fine, E2M5, and that was a pretty crazy one to try and pull off. You know, that pretty much pushed our ammo to the very limit. So we'll see what happens. Will Gregory McMartin have expected us to shotgun start these? Or is he going to have punished us greatly for it? I'm not actually sure what exactly Gregory McMartin's videos actually did, if he shotgun started his own levels or whatnot. I definitely have to look into that. I'm curious. Anyway, he had great fun designing it. And, as the story below leads you to believe, he'll probably make a sequel to it. Honestly, I'm not sure if he ever made the sequel. I don't think we've ever had any info about him making a sequel at all in any form, shape. So really, as far as we know, this is the complete collection of stuff Gregory McMartin has done for Quake. There might be more stuff out there, but I don't think he had any videos on it, and I don't think I've ever seen anything outside of this to be attributed to Gregory McMartin besides his deathmatch levels. Let's see. If you enjoy playing it, drop me an email message saying so. If I find enough people who do enjoy it, then I'll make a follow-up episode. Yeah, right there. That's probably why he didn't, because honestly, I think Aftershock kind of suffers from the same problems as Dark Hour and Q2 in the fact of the matter that it fell into kind of relative obscurity. It seems like, honestly, it gained a little bit more popularity and was a little bit more well-known. It was probably the most well-known pack, I want to say, of, like, 96. Like, in comparison to everything else that came out in 1996, I really want to say, like, Aftershock was the most well-known. But at the same time, it still wasn't exactly, like, the most popular. It wasn't like the official expansions that came out for Quake in 97. So this thing kind of fell into relative obscurity, and therefore he probably didn't get too much popularity for this. Honestly, if anyone wants to drop him an email, that sure is totally fine. I don't really know if he even has the email after 20 years. I guess I could start spamming people's emails, telling them how much I enjoy to dislike their levels, but I'm lazy, and honestly, I think this is probably proof enough of what exactly my opinions are. So, yeah, it kind of works as a good way of doing it without having to, like, spam everyone's inboxes. So, if someone sees it, here we are. I enjoyed your level, or I didn't. I don't know yet. We haven't really done anything. But that's aside the point. Okay, let's see here. I may wait until Quake 2 comes out with new monsters, weapons, etc. So, that is a good question, actually. Maybe Gregory McMartin did something for Quake 2? In such a case, I would have absolutely no idea. I don't know if everyone knows this, but I have yet to play Quake 2. I know how weird it is to sound, since I'm a big fan of Quake and whatnot, and always talking about Quake. But yeah, never touched Quake 2. So, who knows, eventually we may touch that one and have a blind playthrough for that and actually finally be able to say I've seen the second game. I know it's like totally different from Quake 1, so it's kind of like really talking apples and oranges. But it would be nice to see it because 97's a pretty obscure year for me. I've seen like 96, I've seen 98, and really 97's that weird year. But we really don't have too much to really worry about for 96, I believe, outside of Quake. So I really think like we're going to cover like these few months of Quake and then we'll already be at 97. So it might be that if we just continue doing some of this, we might actually get to 97 a lot quicker than say if even we were doing Doom. See, the thing about Doom is that we have a nice organized route. In Quake, we basically are picking pieces apart and having to hope whatever we find. So more than likely, I'm not going to find as much stuff as I was for Doom, sadly. But therefore, it will allow me to get to 97 a lot quicker than, say, Doom, whereby I was basically going around and around and around within a 2-3 month period. Anyway, let's see here. He has written up a little story to go along with the theme of the episode. It is located below. Also below is a level-by-level commentary that advances the story. The story ain't much, but I think it helps you to get a grasp of what the level is attempting to portray. So yeah, it's kind of like a nice little add-on. Quake isn't about the story anyway, but it's a nice little thing that's thrown in here. Anyway, you will notice that not all of the ending doors are the same. To compensate for this, all doors that need a gold key to open are doors that will lead to the end tunnel. Alright, so he tried creating some sort of way to recognize where the exit is. I do like that. This entire episode, as well as the other stuff I did for the Aftershock project, was done in about 1.5 months. So it was rushed out the door, to say the least. Yeah, the one thing to really say about Gregory McMartin, he was responsible for 5 levels in this. He was responsible for quite a few of the deathmatch levels, all the different textures. He had a lot on his plate in 1.5 months. So, yeah. He would have liked to spend quite a bit more time on the art and designing of his episode, and will do so next time. Yeah, that really is the big thing to say about Aftershock in general, as I kind of believe I said before. Aftershock really suffers from let's get out the door syndrome. Aftershock was totally made with the design of trying to cash in on Quake's success, and really had a small window to do such. As you know, Quake 2 came out in '97, so they really had to try and push it for this time if they were to get any success. And as the Christmas season's the best season to really sell these things, it really was that you really had to cram in this right before the holidays. So as such, everything around this time period was heavily rushed, to the point that it really was slapped together half the time, and that's why we kind of get the idea that it's generally shovelware. Some of those did better with its quality control and managed it better than other ones did in regards to getting it done on time. But the truth of the matter is that all of these packs were heavily rushed due to the time period in which they were made and what exactly the commercial intent of these packs were to do. So, not exactly the best of situations at all, especially for us consumers nowadays who would probably have enjoyed them to be designed for their full fruition. But it does make sense from a commercial standpoint, even if they probably never made back the money that they originally did for these packs, because, you know, who actually really bought these. You know, I can't imagine many besides the actual hardcore Quake enthusiasts actually going out and getting these. Generally speaking, I don't think many people know Q2 exists at all, Dark Hour exists at all, and some people know about Aftershock, but I don't really think too many. Really, when you think Quake, you just think Quake and the 2 expansion packs, and really, everyone kind of forgets everything else exists. You might hear like even Abyss of Pandemonium or so, but when you hear this one, most people just aren't going to say it's worth it when really it's a short campaign and there's no new enemies or really anything of actual interest. And that can be a little bit of a selling point. It's always to have new content I will admit that new content is a nice thing to have. I do like the idea of having new stuff thrown in, just because it keeps it more interesting than having the same few enemies over and over. But I'm perfectly fine with the same few enemies. It's the base enemies that made Quake good. As I've said before, to have a good thing, all you really need to do is replicate what made the game good. The difference between good and great is that great goes out of its way to make something that feels amazing and different, and add some sort of unique spin on the entire thing. Sorry about this. My God, this it definitely is getting more annoying the more I do these the headphones turning off. I really need to figure out some way to keep them on. Maybe I'm gonna have like some weird classical music going in the background or something. That's what we'll need. We'll need some weird music going on in the background from now on, so that way I have something to like. It needs to be something soft, but something that will just serve as being like some filler in the background so my headset doesn't turn off. Um, anyway, here is a wish list of things that I would have liked to have put in Descent into Horror but didn't due to time constraints. Oh, before we actually get to that, there was a little bit more of the previous paragraph. My mistake. One thing you will notice, this episode requires a fast machine to play well, which really doesn't matter today. Some of the complex geometry of the levels really pig slower machines. So people with 486s, stick to Duke. Yeah, Quake was a very, very demanding game at time of release. It really was the start of 3D acceleration because it was the start of mainstream 3D. I mean, we had stuff like Terminator Salvation coming out a little bit before this and whatnot, but this was the first one to have fully hardware accelerated 3D with shadows and all different little things thrown into it to make a full 3D world. There's still it's sprites for the explosions and whatnot and things that really generally don't matter, but the general idea is that it's all 3D overall. And that really is a big importance over past games whereby it was mostly 2D. Either the enemies were, or the weapons were, or the level in general felt it because the objects were. This was really like one of the first ones that was full 3D, that you could see a physical gun, and you weren't some vehicle move around Descent. So it was a very, very different experience. And as such, it was probably one of the more demanding things you could play at the time. Here is a wish list of things I would have liked to have put into Descent into Horror but didn't due to time constraints. These were also things that will definitely be in the sequel, if there is a sequel. Way more secrets and traps. Yes, one criticism that can definitely be pointed at this level, in Aftershock in general, is the full lack of secrets. There's just not many. I think Descent into Horror does have more secrets than, say, the second episode. As we're going to see like a couple more thrown in here and there. But generally speaking, it still does not feel like the most secret packed thing. Only like one or two of the levels is really going to have a decent number of secrets, and other than that, it's going to feel kind of like how we've been dealing with the entire pack, which is, generally speaking, there's just not many secrets. It's come back to secrets definitely from the days of Dark Hour and after Q2 where there were none at all. But Aftershock still does not have like a nice consistent number of secrets with which we can say they're packed into every level. More balanced gameplay. The levels were not really tested that much. Yeah, that is one thing definitely to say. I criticize a lot of these all the time or whatnot, but one thing that definitely can be said is that these levels really didn't have the time to really be play tested. It really was kind of make them, then shove them out the door. And one big difference that should have to be pointed out between a commercial thing versus a user created thing is that a user created thing actually is something that you should expect a bit more quality from, because a user has the ability and time to take an infinite number of time to make it. They're not requiring funds to make the entire thing and having to rush it out the door by a certain date. By making it all a commercial effort, that suddenly adds a lot of constraints to it. It means that there's a more professional team on board and that you definitely expect a certain level of quality, but it also means that it's also constrained by a certain proportions and certain limitations that are thrown in there that you won't otherwise have. So there is definitely some argument to be made that a commercial level like this, definitely, while I'm nitpicking them and saying that they're not the greatest, there's definitely excuses for why they aren't the greatest. That I still believe that I should be able to say that they aren't the greatest, and also believe I should be able to give able criticism, because saying that they are the greatest regardless of all this is pretty much one, lying, and two, not really constructive to the community as a whole. Um, I feel by saying, exactly what it is, a horse is a horse, of course, we can move forward and have more reflection on what good looks like versus bad, and have an idea of what, decent quality is. Just as a reflection on the levels as a whole. What exactly, you should be spending your money on? What exactly, you should look out for, and things that you must play versus levels that probably aren't worth your time. There's a lot of reasons why exactly you should try and look at these and not just excuse everything and be like, well, every level is good. And that's kind of why I never really took that stance of just saying, well, it was decent, especially because it was made in 1996. If I said that for pretty much every game I've done, usually I cover stuff that came out around the same time the game was released, so I would have to be lenient on every single thing I do. So, it definitely isn't the best way to cover anything. And I think probably the way I do it probably is a nice, fair way to do it, because I'm looking at everything from the same era. I'm not looking at something modern all the time and then jumping back and saying it's terrible. So I think I have therefore a bit more fairness towards that I can apply to it, especially when looking at it from like Quake's perspective, because I'm not even using any modern source ports or anything. I'm using actual DOSBots based thing, but the actual Quake game is the exact same. So because of that, I'm basically reviewing it with something that you'd basically be expected to use in 96, and be given a remotely similar experience. Not something that's going to pop up because, oh, you were using a modern source for it, and because of that, this was the problem. Um, Honestly, anything that we find here can be valid criticisms because of how the gameplay is. Some things that you can apply to Doom might be a bit easier because we've added mouse lock, or we've added different mechanics or something like that. And that's always the argument you can kind of make against source ports, is that they nerf the game in various ways or make it different. And because of that, it can be good cosmetically, but bad when it turns to actual physical balance, because you change one thing, it changes everything. And so it really needs to have some level of control that most people are not going to have because they're not the original designers. Um, and as such, that's why I'm kind of like usually against modern source ports, especially for games like after Quake or so, Quake and after, because they weren't made by the original designers with that certain mindset in mind. And so it may be a very minor cosmetic thing, so, but you never know if they've changed something in there that's going to mess up the entire level flow. So other than that, really, Like I said, games prior to it, I mostly do just because the experience I feel is so horrible without it. Because at this point, really, it's so different from modern gameplay. Like anything like Quake going forward really is normal gameplay. It doesn't have all the little features or so that a modern game would have. It doesn't have the recoil or all the other little crazy effects that you might see. But it's the same mechanics, the same controls. Once you add mouse look in there, once you add certain things, it starts becoming similar. This was around the time WASD, which is of course the same controls as nowadays. It's a pretty similar atmosphere. Something you can't really apply to these old school shooters because they were made with a very different mindset. They were made with the mindset that games were like dungeons whereby you explore through mazes and have your map to find your way through a maze, and how everything should be like killed in giant majorities instead of a few enemies at a time that have intelligent AI. It's just a very different design mentality. At this point, I really should throw in some classic music. The one problem I'm gonna have is, I need to like find some royalty-free music. Royalty-free classical music. Let's see if I can find that. I need some royalty-free classic music here. Sure, let's throw some back on. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing, people. But let's play some royalty-free music. Well, that's a music sheet. I kind of wanted to hear music, not just see sheet music. Yeah, that really doesn't help me. Let's see here. I have no idea what I'm doing. Let's play some music and see what happens. Here we are. Here's some random music by George Frederick Handel. No idea. There we are! You want classical music? You're welcome! Hooray! Okay, so now with all this in mind, we have some random classical music going, and now I can talk without being cut out. Let's see here. So, another thing you would have liked was more variety in the wall art, i.e. more specific things, like signs and eye candy, like the Jesus and the Quake levels. So yeah, that's definitely one thing to talk about, is the fact of the matter that he didn't add too much detail to the walls. It generally was that he threw in some textures on the walls, and that was pretty much about it. He had some little detailing to like furnitures and architecture, but there definitely was a lot less going on the walls generally. So I can definitely understand where he's coming from with that little criticism towards himself. It's probably not the most important of features. Like, I don't really feel, honestly, that he really need to prioritize that. But it is a minor little thing that you could say that really could be applied to everything we've seen. In fact, these criticisms could be applied to pretty much the entirety of Aftershock. But you know, it could be applied to all of this pack. This pack is actually terrible, according to Gregory McMartin. That's basically what we're learning. We're learning why this pack is terrible, a criticism by one of the designers itself. I know you're about to play my level. Let me tell you exactly why it's terrible. That's what I feel like I'm reading right now. But honestly, at the same time, I do understand his humility and definitely can appreciate that he can see criticisms into his own designs. So I do give him props to that. He would also like more levels and multiple secret mini levels. Yes, there is a couple flaws about Aftershock in design with that. You see, Aftershock, as I've said, is a pretty small pack. It has 4 levels, then 5, then 5. So we're talking 14 levels for an entire campaign. You take that and look at, like, original Quake, that's not even 2 full episodes. Yeah, so it definitely feels a lot shorter than the original game did, especially since not all those levels are relatively long at all. They're like a few rooms. So because of that, it feels very, very short, and you're already pretty much sitting there like, this was it? This was the entire pack? I want my money back! Then you go to a store and nobody wants to give you your money back, and you end up crying alone because you end up with a few levels that nobody else wants to play deathmatch with you. Yeah, that's kind of what happens. You have a bunch of deathmatch levels in here, but nobody else has Aftershock, so what in God's name are you supposed to do? That's when you try and pretend that you're imagining that there are other people playing with you. You go a bit insane, and thus you end up kind of like in the situation I'm in, whereby I'm just talking random Aftershock levels, while everyone else is focused on the latest Call of Duty or whatever else is out there. Oh look! I talked longer than a classical music track! Oh dear God! Why do I talk so long? Yeah, well, that was brilliant. Hooray! I threw some classical music in there. I hope you like that, people. I honestly don't know what I'm doing. But let's see here. We also have Quake C usage. Yeah, I can definitely see what he's talking about. See, basically, the Quake C is the actual physical code. It's basically what modifies the game. We haven't really seen anything like actual Quake C usage, so I really don't know how that exactly turn out, but that's really where you get custom weaponry, custom enemies, differences in the actual physical gameplay, really different mechanics, and all that fun stuff. We may eventually see some of that stuff as we continue moving along, but for the time being, it's definitely something that we really haven't seen at all. I couldn't even tell you what it's like, because honestly, at this point, I pretty much know just how Quake is, and that's pretty much all I know. It's been a very long time since I've even touched the expansion pack, so honestly, I can just like barely remember like little details here and there. And as time goes on, I just forget more and more because I haven't played them in so long. Let's see here. Any other suggestions he gets from people? He's very open to any and all thoughts concerning level design. That's very good. It sounds like he's the type of person that really wants criticism and can understand criticism. And that's definitely the type that I definitely respect. A lot more than, this is my first level, please be nice. Honestly, I feel that really is basically saying, I don't really want criticism, please be just gentle and say, well, it's his first level, let's give him 10 stars. Honestly, like I said, I feel there should always be like a level of criticism involved in all this, and we should always be able to willingly say what's on our minds and how exactly we feel about a level. Because at the end of the day, what a level is an art, a work of art. It's something crafted by someone to be enjoyed by others. And so it really is something that should be able to be looked at, critiqued, and said exactly what exactly opinions are. Opinions, of course, are going to differ from person to person, but it's always nice to get more opinions. If there are no opinions at all, it kind of stinks. And honestly, that's one thing I really noticed with like custom levels. I generally don't see any opinions at all on them, and I think that's kind of one of the things that inspired me to start like critiquing things a lot as much as I do, and why I give so many lengthy rants in these, because I feel nobody else out there really is expressing themselves in their full opinions on things, and so therefore I kind of wanted to be the vocal one expressing all my opinions on these old school games. Yes, they're 20 years old and they're probably not very, very relevant to much stuff today, but at the same time it is stuff that has existed and really doesn't get enough attention, especially since a lot of this stuff goes under the radar. So having it be able to be critiqued, having it critiqued by level instead of as a whole. That's the other thing. I tend to like it when people actually like nitpick everything and go down and dirty and look at like each level as its own separate entity instead of as a greater whole, whereby you tend to blanket term everything and don't tell me your opinions on how exactly you feel certain levels were in comparison to others. I definitely prefer when it's a lot longer and details like every single level and some type of breakdown. And we generally don't get that type of stuff for these games. So thus, why exactly I'm so always ranting and raving and all that. I am not a person who's just out here to bash everyone and say everything's terrible, because why not? No, I'm the type of person that just loves giving my opinion and honestly feels that I'm basically giving my opinion on a sea of places whereby nobody gives their opinions. Like I said, most people just play these games, and that pretty much is about it. I'd rather express different ideas. I don't know, but honestly, that's something I kind of always wished I saw from more people. And so therefore, why I do it. Because if you don't see it anywhere, do it yourself. And so that's why I have done it. Anyway, let's throw another classic music track on here, because my headphones are probably going to shut off soon. There we are. Some random classical music. Here we are. That'll keep it so it doesn't go off. Yeah, this is really weird to have me say that. Who knows? I have no idea what I'm doing. Enjoy! Thanks for purchasing Aftershock. Alright, let's see here. And you're welcome, Gregory. Okay, the piano music really is weird, but we shall try to work around it. To ramble. Yeah, this makes me feel like I'm rambling even more. It suddenly feels like I'm Grandpa Simpson rambling about the war. We've gone into a very lengthy thing. Of course, we have been talking for 40 minutes to a black screen. So, yeah. We haven't even actually gotten to talk about the level itself. You realize the problem here? We've been talking for 40 minutes and we're still not at the actual level. Okay. And that's the other thing. I have been getting criticisms about like my emotional things and how exactly I kind of ran. But I feel that's better than just sitting here like Microsoft Sam and be like, I'm Microsoft Sam. Hi. My Rafflecopter goes soy. It just feels dull. And honestly, I like to have a bit more emotion in these. I get emotional about games. I love talking out loud, but I love different things about these games. That's why I still play them. If I wasn't getting enjoyment, I wouldn't be playing them in the first place. And so I don't really get why it's not going to come on here and just be bored to death while recording this thing. Instead, I like to have fun and entertain myself, and therefore, why I get very emotional and whatnot. We have some screaming in there because why not? Rah! Yeah! King of Death! So, yeah, we have some very fun things. We have some randomness in there just to throw it in there and have some fun. May seem to some immature, but games are an immature thing. It's a time to relax and have fun and do whatever. And yeah, so if you expect anything different, I'm sorry. But honestly, I like it. I'm gonna go down to the kitchen and get me some more of it. Anyway, let's see here. We have to talk about story. Because Quake, we need to talk about story. The most important thing we can talk about in the game, right? Okay. Earth. 120 years from the present day. Wait, was it 120 years from what day? From 2017? Or are we talking from 1996? If so, we've already lost 20 of those years. Oh dear God, we're on a 100-year countdown, people. We're on about 100 years exactly right now. The planet has been devastated by an interstellar war with a race known only as the Eternals. Ah dear God, we're doomed. Apparently we're all going to die due to, well, get into some random war. The race seems not to care for property, as they have not claimed any of the homeworlds that they have ravaged. The planet can barely support life now, and is littered with thousands upon thousands of ruined clothed cities and towns. I don't really know why I said clothes. The blackened landscape is a grim reminder for all who visit Earth that those who defy the Eternals pay in blood. So, I assume by this point we've gone to, like, space travel. I really hope so, because at this point it sounds like it really is terrible to be a human on Earth. Um, so we defied the Eternals? Could we explain to me why exactly we defied the Eternals? Okay. I don't really know, but let's go with it. Just go with it. Yeah, I would like some more details in this plotline, but somehow I don't think we're going to begin a novel-esque storyline. And we really can't ask for one. As I said, quick, story. We're talking B-movie stuff here. Yeah. Ooh, I'm a spooky alien. I come out to space and I destroy you. Yeah, it's a B-movie plot, and it's pretty much all we really can ask for in Quake. Because in Quake, the whole point is shoot, shoot, kill. You see something? Shoot it! You see a friend? Shoot it! You see a guy waving hi to you, and he'll offer you $1 million if you don't shoot him. Shoot it! That pretty much is Quake, in a nutshell. So, yeah, the solution to everything is shooting it, or walking into it aimlessly. You know, bumping into random things and not knowing what you're doing is part of the fun in Quake. See, that's something you can't get the fun in Doom. You have to hump everything in Doom. You have to be some egomaniac sexual marine who has to have sex with every single wall he sees. Meanwhile, in Quake, you're just some random dude who walks around and bumbles into every wall, and it's like, oops, I caused another vortex to hell to open. Not again. And so why you always say, yeah, you know, Eye of the Beholder flying specters destroying your homeland. Oh, because, you know, you had to hit that wrong button on the wall. Okay. There are mere 2 million human beings left in the universe, and you are one of them. Thank God. For a minute, I thought you were going to say I was some sort of furry or something. No offense to those furries out there, but if I was a furry shooter dude, I'd be kind of concerned about my identity in this. After all, we need to have our own identity in these video games. I can't exactly be playing anything besides a white human male, because that's what I am. If I play anything else, I might be concerned about who I am and not be able to relate to it fully. So it's very important we keep that realism in our games. It's very important. This is the most important thing ever. I can never play Tomb Raider. I can never play Tomb Raider because it shows a female, and I cannot be a female at all. Never can identify with any other thing else besides a human male in the game. Very important. So, with that out of the way, thank God we're not playing a furry in this game, because otherwise how else would we be able to identify it with being a human? Okay. Then again, isn't the furry a human, but they're not identified as humans? I don't really know the specifics of all this. Never mind. Okay. You work for a scavenging company, which goes about the universe collecting salvageable pieces of ships, weapons, and other potentially useful items. Earth is still being picked apart for useful materials, and probably will be for years to come. You've been assigned the solo duty of delving into an old Earth military factory. You assume that the job will be very routine. Of course we're going in solo. Why wouldn't we be? Honestly, would you want, like, a group of people or so to, like, transfer all the goods? Or is it, like, all automated besides one person? Why don't you just have, like, some robot go in or so? Like, have some, like, robot go down there and send all the stuff in. It's almost all automated anyway. Can't you just have like an automatic flight go down or something? I feel like this is really like, why even send humans here? Yep, you have to go into a random military factory. Good luck. But then again, when has common sense and Doom or Quake gone together? That really isn't the plot of these. The plot of these is to shoot things, and I do good at that. I hope I do good at it, because it's the only thing that really determines skill set here. Okay, here's a random dude. He's playing music. Hope you like it. I'm trying to just play it quick. I keep getting guys on piano. Oh god, this is loud. This one's the loudest one I've probably heard so far. I want soft music. I just want, like, soft music. Can we have that? Yeah, okay. Here we are. Something. Hope you're happy. Yeah, electrical buzz in the background. That totally helps. Okay, so we have electrical buzz in the background, some piano music. That'll totally help me actually ramble. Alright, let's see here. E4M1. Wait, what? E4M1? Wait a minute here. Gregory McMartin put all these levels as episode 4. Well, that's interesting to note. Yeah, open up your test file for this, and you'll actually see all these levels were done with episode 4. You know, he put episode 3 at the beginning and changed that. Besides the fact that, did he actually even say it was episode 3? I think we got ripped off an episode, people. We got bloody ripped off an episode. It was rushed out the door even faster than he expected. Because we wrote this, it was supposed to be E4. Yeah, this was supposed to be the 4th episode, not the 3rd. And now we only have 3 episodes, so we kind of got ripped off somewhere. Well, that stinks. Okay, E4M1. The surface. You are dropped off near an entrance at the bottom of a massive pit in the surrounding mountains. You find yourself on some type of landing pit with a curious military symbol on it. Immediately you get the impression that this is no military factory. From what you know of Earth history, this symbol was and the one by the entrance door with the 3 lines indicate that this was some very secret facility. Obviously, the vague designation of military factory was just a cover. You're more than a little surprised to find out that there are actually people in this place. But who they are, and why they want to do nothing but fill you with bullets and blast you with laser bolts, are questions you'll probably never get an answer to. Okay. So, as Gregory McMartin warns you, this level is a very tough mission. Probably too tough for the first level in an episode. But at least it gives you a good idea of what is to come. And indeed it does. Honestly, E4M1 is a pretty brutal mission for a first level of an episode. I'm really expecting to die here at least one time because this level is pretty painful. It really is pretty cruel in some of its device mechanisms, as you'll kind of see as I show it all off. It's not exactly the easiest one to complete, and honestly, it's a level I'd never really recommend completing co-op because you'll probably mess something up and everyone will be doomed. But yeah, it's a very interesting level. Anyway, that pretty much summarizes that as far as I can see. But I also wanted to look up quickly, like, Gregory McMartin and see, like, his stuff, just because I was curious if I could, like, for a second see, like, his videos and maybe see if he shotgun starts them, because I'm actually curious if he does. If so, that'd be interesting, as this is the first time he's, a developer is actually designing, like, shotgun starting in mind. It's, like, guaranteed or so. So let's see here, E3M3 or so, let's see here. What does he do? Well, one thing is that he hides the fact of the matter that he has a shotgun. I mean, he hides the fact that he has a HUD. Oh no, he's definitely carrying stuff over. You can see that he has, like, guns from one level and, like, another level. So he's definitely not recommending that you're doing this. So as usual, we're basically going to be pulling off something entirely insane. Also, no, he hasn't released anything on YouTube in like 9 years. Well, that kind of stinks. Um, I think he actually changed his YouTube channel at some point, I want to say. I think he's like doing something for some other game now, so I forget. But yeah, he basically just released these like 9 years ago, back in 2008. So yeah. um, let's see here. Um, okay, so he basically designed this level for Quake. Um, as he basically even says in his video for the Surface, Gregory McMartin basically admits that this is the hardest level in his entire episode. And yeah, I would kind of agree with that. Honestly, after this level, it gets relatively simple, but this mission is almost near infamous levels of difficult. I'd say this is probably one of the more difficult levels we've ever seen. This really takes the entire thing to another level, and it's probably one of the greatest challenges we're going to be hitting, besides Shuck and starting one of the the crazier levels like E2M sets. It's still designed for actual playability in mind, unlike that. So that's the big difference here. Um, let's see here. As he even says, they basically rushed it to completion and all that. Um, So basically, before this, he created Raditz, which was a game made in like 1995 and was like some space-based shooter. And so this was like his next project. And I believe a lot of the team that made Raditz actually went on to create this Aftershock expansion. Basically, the idea behind it was that the editor used on Raditz somehow is very, very similar to that used on the original one for Quake, which was Thread. So basically, it really kind of became that the Thread editor was basically designed from the Raditz design or so, whatever it was used to make that space game. So there definitely was some sort of evolutionary thing going on here, whereby like the team came over from that and made this. Um, Honestly, I haven't ever touched Raditz at all. I'm surprised, honestly, with my whole chronological order. I must have kind of slipped up on that one. Thank goodness I did, because now I can actually avoid ever playing this thing. Yeah, I'm not really a space simulator type of person, and so I probably am not going to go rush out and play this game immediately. Um, I know a fellow administrator of mine on the Wiki, Vorknets, definitely is a fan of it, and he's a big fan in general of Gregory A. McMartin. Honestly, he kind of is always like talking about him. So it's definitely one of the more recognizable things of the Wiki because Vorknets knows about it as well. So with that in mind, let's see here. As basically Gregory McMartin said, he made a lot of levels with a pseudo 3D engine, and he was really happy with Quake because it was the first one being a full 3D engine. Um, so he basically starts using like the z-axis, like basically going up and down, to basically try and create a lot of like navigation difficulties and make it hard to navigate around. And so he kind of uses it quite a bit here, actually. He really was kind of like obsessing at this point over making a lot of vertical based levels. And I think that's one of the things really to mention is that that really was the craze at the time, is that Quake comes out. Now all of a sudden we get the ability to make full 3D levels, and because it's such a new thing, a lot of people are trying to do something they can't do before, and so they make ridiculously vertical levels. And that's kind of where a lot of my gripes come from with some of these missions, so like some of the well-designed ones, is because they almost feel too vertical. They don't feel like you're exploring an area and going horizontally across something, because almost when you're going vertical, it's almost just feeling like you're descending somewhere and just going down a little bit to somewhere you were before. Um, it just feels like less exploration based than if you're going across a horizontal plane. So I feel there's definitely like a need for a level to have a certain amount of horizontalness. And so therefore that's kind of like some of my criticism for Gregory McMartin, and why exactly I prefer like episode 1 over this sometimes, because that has a lot of horizontal space, while this one has more of like a focus on verticality. And I feel it was a limitation or whatnot because of his obsession with creating verticality. Like I said, it makes sense at the time why he did it. Like I said, it was a craze at the time. A lot of people were doing it because it was so new. But basically the problem was that they took it to too much of a limit and really didn't focus on what made past levels great. And if you notice in like original Quake, you never get too ridiculous in verticality besides maybe like levels with like Wizard's Manse or something like that. And honestly, I'm not a big fan of those levels either. So it kind of is something that's very comparable and definitely something to not go too crazy with. It's something you have to kind of control in doses. There definitely needs to be verticality. You don't want to have it too flat. Then you get Wolfenstein 3D or Q2. But you don't want to have it to the point whereby all you're doing is vertical travel and you're rarely doing any horizontal movement. So let's see here. He also had a lot of fun here with making like cylinders. Really with like Quake coming around, you could make a lot more shapes versus like Doom, where a lot of it was boxy, and like Quake, a lot of the focus was on making a lot of different shapes that had more like angles and whatnot because it was a 3D environment. And so therefore now all of a sudden you get a bunch of cylinders and other weird little abstract shapes. Honestly, I think it'd be nice though if we had more cylinder-based rooms. I feel like half the time we end up getting a lot of like boxy-based rooms, and that's kind of what we generally do happen to get. Let's see here. And honestly, Gregory McMartin kind of feels less about the textures that he made. He honestly feels he could have done a lot better work with them, apparently. He criticizes them in his own first video here. Honestly, I don't feel that they're bad at all. I feel that they have their place, that they serve their own little purpose or whatnot, that they are, they don't really feel terrible at all. I don't really have any point, even with Cute 2, where I can really criticize any of the textures. Maybe it's just because I'm not really that much of a stickler for textures. As long as it's not ridiculously blurry, I'm pretty fine with whatever you throw. Textures really are one of my lesser concerns. It's more about the variety of a level and the fact that you're using different textures than whatever those textures actually are. And of course, I always like seeing custom textures. I'm honestly appreciative of the fact that every single pack we played is using its own custom texture set with no textures from the original game. It makes it very nice because it makes a bunch of standout stuff that we haven't seen before in terms of textures. It makes it all definitely like different looking and whatnot. And it's very nice the fact that you could easily port all this over and make some really weird hybrid thing, as long as you just gave it to yourself, because, well, you can't exactly give it out to other people without, like, violating copyright laws. But it'd definitely be nice to, like, mesh together, like, all these different textures, just for your own little enjoyment, of something that's like an Aftershock Dark Hour Q2 based experience. Who would have known? You can throw them all together in one and make something that's like an amazing part of all three. The one thing I have to say is I feel very lazy making levels for Quake myself, because honestly the Quake level editors aren't really the best. Um, like, we don't have any GTX Radiant or something like that that really works with Quake 1. It does, but the problem is that you can't really like see physical enemies in your level editing. I don't think it actually works with any of them. And because of that, and the fact that you can't, Quake code is kind of like a pain to get at and whatnot, it just ends up feeling a lot more of a pain than it would in later games, whereby the files are more readily accessible. This was like a first step towards accessibility and a lot more moddability than we saw in Doom, whereby things were kind of like packed together in WADs that were a pain to reach at. But we're still not at a point where things are like fully editable and fully accessible. And honestly, Doom and those are a bit easier to make for because they're not full 3D. So you end up getting something that, because it's the first of its kind and hasn't really been optimized for user creation, is a bit more frustrating than those later things are to make for. I think I'd rather design for a more recent game than I ever would for something like the original Quake. And I think that's actually probably one of the saddest parts, is a lot of these old school games really suffer from having really unintuitive level designers. I mean, look at Drumhead, for Thief. Drumhead is a very powerful editor and has a lot of amazing stuff to it, but at the end of the day, one of the biggest problems is that it's ridiculously unstable and was made for the DOS platform. So both those problems together end up being a very horrible user experience, and one that basically everyone pats each other on the back just because you managed to make a level and accomplished to make it without it being horribly corrupted. It's that hard of experience to make stuff, in some of these editors. So it's definitely worthy of saying that everything is indeed praiseworthy. It definitely, like, anything you make for, like, Quake, any of these beginner levels, you still have to put in some effort of actually trying to make the stuff in a, thread, which I'll eventually show you guys thread, and it's not a nice experience. It's probably one of the most counterintuitive things I've ever seen. It makes modern Quake editors look horrible. I mean, when I say make modern Quake editors look absolutely amazing, and honestly, I think modern Quake editors still don't have the capabilities of like a more modern game engine editor. Anyway, with all that in mind, I think if I keep talking, I'm going to have like my headphones cut out again, and we've already gone on for an hour and 10 minutes. How long can I make this thing before we actually show you some content? So let's load this thing up and shoot stuff, because I figure it's the kind of way you're here. You're here to actually watch me play a level and not talk. But I like to do both, and so we end up rambling forever. The important thing to remember was I had an onion tied to my belt. So, there we are. We are now in the surface, the beginning of this military base. As he basically said, these things have like lines on the surface. And one thing that's very important to remember, there's a lot of detailing here. Look at the details. Like, look at all the little minor details that are thrown in there. The signs up there, windows up there. It definitely is a lot more detailed than what we saw in episode 2, where it was very, very crude at times. This is a very, very different experience when it comes in terms of like adding little extra flavors. I guess that's one thing to say, is that it's definitely, if you're looking for like something made with a lot of detailing in mind, this is a good level. It just is flawed in terms of actual playability. And at the end of the day, that's really what I care about. I don't care about a level looking pretty, I care about playability. And so we'll talk about that as we go along. Anyways, you see here, the important thing to remember though is that it does look pretty nice. It has a random hole in the floor there. Make sure to get my mouse ready. Alright, so we head over here. We have a broken piece. Let's hop over. And we have a silver door. Oh, so much for going this way. Where are we going? We have windows there. That doesn't help us at all. We drop in the water. There's some ammo down here. That's convenient. We're going to need all the ammo we can get. This is probably one of the hardest levels in all of Aftershock. So we need whatever we can get to survive. Let's see here. Let's swim around here. There's a random giant hole down there, but we're probably going to drown if we go down there. So let's see what else we can find. Yep, I want to show that off, people. That's basically a major glitch with this level. You basically can hug this wall right here, and you can basically pick up the key from within. It's a ridiculously bad exploit, and definitely shows that these levels could have been designed a little bit better, because that's a ridiculously flawed exploit right there. It's something definitely that's easy enough to avoid, but it's definitely a pretty bad exploit when it breaks the entire floor of your level like that easily. Yeah, hooray! I found a way to exploit his level. Anyway, here's a fast up-moving elevator. Let's head up this thing and see where it leads. It leads me to a grunt. Hi, we come in peace. I don't think he did, but luckily he is dead. This was pointless. Now what? This is interesting. If you look, there's like this piece of rock jutting out from the wall from the rest of it. If you shoot it, it's actually a secret. Hooray for finding a secret. We can use this armor to survive. Using armor can help you survive. Don't I sound like some amazing tutorial or so? Like some really horrible game tutorial? Dive between here. Be careful not to pick up the silver key. And now I basically have to tell you the first reason why this level is so painful. We have to swim down here. There's no other way to do this that's legitimate. Without, you know, exploiting the key or whatever. And to do that, you basically need to swim down this long area where you're going to lose some health. Yes, you're going to intentionally lose some health here. And we're basically going to have to endure this. So, just going to swim quickly. Hope we don't lose too much health. Going to be a world of hurt though. Oop, bumped against the wall, so that's going to make me lose a little bit more. Come on, move quick! Move quick! Just look at my health. There, of course, we get shot right as we leave the water. So, as you see, it's a pretty painful experience. Not the best way to start this. But one nice thing to talk about, all the little cables. This episode features a lot of little tiny cables everywhere. That definitely makes it pretty interesting looking. Like I said, it has a nice look in comparison to everything else by far. Even if it has that evil water swimming ride. And it is the hardest episode, so that is of course another benefit. But yeah, this episode's very, very painful. So you straight this. It's a trap! It seems I've unleashed hell. Yay, I got the silver key. No more exploits for me. Yep, this is where we have exploited into. So this is where it was on the water outside. Anyway, like I said, there's a lot of shiny little cables, decorations. This episode ain't bad at all. It's much better than episode 2. It feels like a pretty good experience. Like I said, the problem is that it just has verticality too much, and it also doesn't really have like its own uniqueness feel like episode 1 did. It doesn't really like stand out to me as being something that really has like its own unique flavor. It feels like just generic levels. Like, yes, we have cables, yes, we have like nice little decorations and little hazards, but it still doesn't feel like a nice little solid theme. Oh boy. Even if we are shooting enemies in a sewer, which does feel pretty nice. Anyways, you can imagine the fluids there was actually slime, and oh god, a minute. As you can see, this lid is basically how you climb out of it. You just gotta be quick and jump out quickly. Not the easiest of ways. This level's really gonna play with your ability to like maneuver on things. So, this should be a fun time. Somebody shut something open. You see there's a slime pit down there. Now is there like a... this is like a pit that goes out, but doesn't allow me to come in. It's just like a raised area that I can't reach. That doesn't help me in the slightest. Because the only way forward is up this ramp. And of course, that basically means we have to jump across a pit without falling into the slime below. I just fell into slime without even trying. That stinks. Okay, time for a run and jump maneuver. Didn't do it. Saddest part is the Biosuits on the opposite side, so you have to like jump across. There we are. I also shot out somewhere. I don't really know where, but here it was. Here's the secret. And now we can go into the bio water swamp thing. And we can get a double-barreled shotgun. Well, at least that means I'm going to die a little bit less. I'm not actually sure if like I can get any cells or anything, but in case I can, I'd also like to head down this way. You have to like raise out of it and then like jump. So you have to like time this exactly right in order not to fall into a slime. Like I say, it really plays with your maneuverability skills. You really have to like time things right here. So this isn't exactly the easiest thing to pull off at all. But it's a matter of maneuverability. And now we've triggered this to open, which of course leads back to the silver door. So you'll come over here. Which we actually have a little texture on the wall. U.S. Army, we actually no-clip to fly up there. So I want to read this, and I can't really from here. That sauce? Sauce. Sauce Computer Training Facility. That's what I got. Oh, you know what it is? It's space. Space Command Training Facility. That's what it is. We're in space, people. Dying. Wait. Oh, space training on Earth. Either way, it works. Anyway, we found our way both this secret, so now it's a matter of living. That's kind of the high part here. Living. Good luck to that one, people. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. You can see here, there's also a lot of grunts just waiting to weed down your health. As usual in these type of levels, it's all a matter of turning corners gently, guarding against what you're doing. As you can see, there's also some very interesting geometry going on here. You can tell there's weird, like, slanting curve area. And that's already most of the enemies in the map, mind you. We're already up to 34 out of 38. Most things in the level are dead. Yay for good news. The bad news is this level is hard because of the architecture, not the enemies. So we have pools all running along it, but it's totally useless. There's nothing in there. Just little nice little details. And a weird little tunnel thing. We of course have this, which is of course C, and this is where the exit is. As he said, the gold door leads to the exit. The gold door leads to the exit. So we have to find the gold key. To get to the gold key, we want to come down here and do something. How do you get to this? It looks like there's a very obvious way to get in here, but I'm not really sure what it is. Hit the light. Hit the light! The light! The light! The light! Hit the lights! Is there like a shootable button or something? We'd be surprised if there's like a very obvious shootable button I'm missing here. Let's look around a bit. We need to look and see if there's something we can shoot that looks different. Why would I get the feeling it's down here somewhere? Like, maybe this very obvious block here. You hear grating metal. As I basically said, it would be some giant blocky thing. This level honestly plays a lot with that. The giant block sticking out leads to something hitting. But really, Gregory McMartin seems to love that for like secrets or anything really in particular. Luckily, it's pretty obvious enough so that way it's not something you have to really hunt around for. But it also means that something that's secret and versus something that's not secret is, of course, not really that much of a difference. Anyway, now the goal is to go into the slime and drop down this giant waterfall. You come down here, you kill some fish. These are the final two enemies. You also get some health down here. 250 health, and a gold key. Now, that's all the rockfish. In fact, that's all the enemies on the map. All you have to do now is pick up the biosuit and swim back up. Which, by the way, is easier said than done. You basically want to, like, swim up here. There we are. You want to get, like, started by jumping, and then you want to just use your arrow keys to move up faster. If you go up trying to swim by using the right mouse button, it will go slower, and you won't have time at all. Now it's a matter of just taking the damage that you need to get across this area. And there we are. 92 health. Most of our health still remaining. We don't exactly have any armor out of the whole circumstances, but we do luckily have health. And honestly, it comes out pretty nicely. Now we just have to like range jump across here, which we just did. Perfectly executed. Now if we can find like a little health pack, it'd be nice, but it really doesn't matter because we're about to exit the level anyway. Let's see. Nothing here. Yeah, we're probably just gonna exit the level at 92 health. So I gain a few health point bonus. I'm gonna lose like 50 shells, a bunch of cells, and anything else of importance. As you see, this is the exit. The end tunnel. And in fact, this is where I got a lot of my terms for the exit things in Quake. Because much like the original vanilla game, what ends up happening is they end up showing little things on the screen that basically tell you what, like, the first time something exits is. So as Gregory McMartin coined a lot of these or whatnot, it basically makes sense to basically throw them and call them by the terms that they are. And that's exactly where we got like the level exit names for the original game, because the first time we saw them, they always told us what they were. And how we got them in Aftershock, because Gregory McMartin did something similar. Even if we didn't get them in the first 2 episodes. So all that in mind. Let's continue forward and exit the level. As you can see, an end tunnel is really much like an arch. It just doesn't have any doors or anything. It's just a straight tunnel that leads to blackness. But that's aside the point. It's simplistic and that's all it needs to be. Oh god, I have no coupon. Things are trying to kill me. But worry about that next time in Ascent. You know, the opposite of the Descent. Funny, we played 2 levels with the Descent in the title, and now we're playing a level with Ascent in the title. What do you know? But that's aside the point. Anyway, thank you very much all for watching. This level, as you kind of see, you know, as I kind of said at the beginning, it really is a level whereby it's a pretty challenging level. Not too much because of the enemies. I mean, if you rush forward like a maniac, you're probably going to lose a lot of health here. But it really is a level that's going to challenge you because of the architecture. I do like that. Really, Quake's enemies generally aren't too hard, but when you start adding in the complex architecture and some of the little inconvenient angles and whatnot, that's when Quake gets hard and really defines an easy level versus a hard level. You compare like something like E1M1 versus something like E4M7, and you can immediately see why E4M7 is so ridiculously different from E1M1. I would say E4M7 is ridiculously hard, but it's a lot harder in comparison because of the architecture differences. And so it kind of goes with here that this level is a pretty cruel and evil level, because it requires you to get injured in various places in order to survive. And that biosuit area is especially pretty cruel because guess what? If someone goes into co-op mode, picks up both of the biosuits, and then manages to die, guess what? Now you basically have no way to get the gold key. Good luck to you. Like, there was literally no way to get the gold key if you pick up the biosuit without, like, doing something. Yeah, it pretty much becomes a suicide route if like somebody wastes the biosuits without picking out the key. So it's really a matter of, knowing the level's architecture or whatnot and dealing with the punishing effects of this level. It's a bit more punishing than your average level. If you don't time things right, if you don't do things right, you probably not have enough health to continue. Um, which is not exactly the nicest of routes, but luckily these levels are pretty bite-sized to a point where it feels a lot more fine than something that was really, really long, whereby it wouldn't be easy to restart. There really isn't too much investment in a Quake level. That's one of the good benefits about this versus something like Thief or so. If this was done in Thief after like an hour at a time, I'd probably be upset with it, because you put a lot of investment into the level. Here, it's done really, in a level that's relatively short. It took us like 10 minutes to complete the entire thing. So, therefore, it really doesn't feel at all the same. And can be really applied a lot more punishing results if you don't do things right, because of that. I still don't like puzzle-based atmospheres or whatnot, and definitely don't appreciate them. But Quake is probably one of the better games for it because even in comparison to Doom, I feel like Quake levels are shorter than Doom levels in general. Doom levels tend to like crawl on for a little bit of time, while a Quake level is going to kind of be flown through really, really quickly. So because of that, and Quake is being so bite-sized, it means that we're going to have Quake levels that would probably be decently suited for puzzles compared to Doom levels, whereby it requires some investment. And that makes for a major difference. Plus the fact of the matter that Quake's puzzles usually aren't too hard to solve. They're pretty usually direct. Don't require like any abstract thinking at all. Besides some like core basics. So yeah, really this level, like I said at the beginning, episode 3 is not a terrible episode at all. It's actually a pretty good episode. I don't really have any problems with it like I do like episode 2. I just still feel it's not the highlight of Aftershock, that some people make it out to be. I honestly prefer episode 1 just because episode 1 feels like it had more of a like, uniqueness to it. It really here was a matter of swim down the water, then swim down the slime. It's a matter of just swimming down pools of fluid and picking up stuff and going back. And it uses some cruel methods for like swimming around, but we've seen water elevators before. We've seen all this different stuff. So it's not exactly like a totally different thing. Like compare this to something like Darmak or like a boat moving across a lake of lava, and you can really notice that there's just a lot more originality with those than something like this. I do like some of the detailing architecture here, like there is a nice like beginning area with the sign and all that. But first of all, this is the only level to have any type of signage at all. And second of all, it really isn't the biggest of deals. It's something that's like blink and you'll miss it type things compared to those whereby it's more interactive architecture and therefore it becomes a bigger part of the level. Um, and like I said, honestly, those first 2 levels of episode 1 in particular, but even the later ones with its, the concept of being all tough enemies or so, or its concept of like being like episode 1, but, being like, multiple floors with a leap of faith-based concept at the end. It basically, each one of them feels like they were trying to do their own thing. Each one feels like it accomplished to do something, or at least was very experimental. While, like I said here, it's trying to do its own thing. It's trying to feel like it's not original Quake, but I don't really know if it succeeds in that regard. Honestly, it ends up feeling a lot like original Quake level, except for the fact that it requires a lot of pain in the environment. And honestly, I guess you could say the fact of the matter is repeating something over and over until you make the certain jump could be frustrating to some people. It's probably not exactly like the best thing in general. I'm pretty fine with it because I feel it's a big part of the game or so, and really keeping the architecture too simple leads to a lot less interesting things. And honestly, I prefer something like how this was executed compared to something like E4M4, where it was just running and jumping across a couple of platforms, all to get a pair of cells was something that wasn't rewarding. Here it was actually a part of the level progression, and so the reward was being able to beat the level, and therefore it felt a lot more important, a lot more tied into everything, and that's why exactly I prefer this over something like E4M4's style. Um, but honestly, at the end of the day, like I said, it definitely is a pretty decent level. Like compared to like, I'd say it's better than like even like E2M3 just because of its little detailing efforts and whatnot, and the fact that matter that it has some nice challenges with the environment that I like here. But at the same time, it still feels like it's lacking the originality based concept, especially since this really is as you said, a flavor of what the rest of the episode's going to have. What you're going to notice with a lot of his levels is that they're very similar to each other, and you're going to feel like this is more of the same thing over and over and over. You're going to see a lot of enforcers and grunts, and that really be like a majority of this pack. It's going to end up feeling very similar to each other and kind of blur into each other because of that. And I feel that's kind of one of the weakest things about his whole collection of levels is that there's really, unlike the original game, the goal here is to kind of like converge on each other and almost have like a progression to like the weirdness or whatnot. And because it's only 5 levels, it really doesn't progress too fast at all. And so it ends up becoming something that really is, by the time you already get to the regular enemies or whatnot, something that's almost over. So it ends up feeling a lot subpar because of that progressive based nature. That's something like the first episode, whereby it was just in your face to begin with and very direct. Um, like I said, I do appreciate the challenge. I do like the differences, and I do like all the different cable wires and the real detailing and all that. But one thing I definitely feel is lacking here is the fact that it's pretty much the start of something that's going to be very generic to this episode, and in general, like I said, really doesn't do too much different besides being another ID based level. I guess you could say that to E1M4, but it just felt like E1M4 was a one-off or so with its uniqueness compared to the rest of the episode. It really was a one-time endeavor, and also did some nice little different things in there. It had Death Knight, it had Vors, it had different enemies all thrown in there to mix it up. It never really got too stagnant. Compared to here, where it was pretty much all grunts, enforcers, and then some fish at the end. And it's going to have bits of more as we get further along, but the idea is that because this progressive based nature, it kind of ruins the early levels if you wanted more variety. And if you're a fan of like id based levels, it's fine, but the fact of the matter is that it just comes off as being less varied, less interesting than say the original game, just because there's really not too much going on here as much. I think one of the nice things about how the base levels worked was that it was totally a drastic change, and at the same time was only done for one level. Because it was one level only, it allowed for something that was one time you saw it, and it was a nice little thing that stuck, but never something that got old. Here you're going to see stuff that's going to be around for a bit of time, and so therefore it feels more repetitive. And I feel that's one of the big weaknesses of this pack. Um, this level didn't feel too vertical at all. It actually kind of felt more like a figure eight, I guess you could say, whereby you're going like across and then down or whatnot. But it never really felt too vertical. Um, honestly, in comparison to some of his other levels, but at the same time, it in general was not exactly the most interesting at things in comparison to, say, episode 1 because of that lack of experimentation. So at the end of the day, I guess I could say what I kind of said for like E2M3, whereby it's a pretty good level. I don't really have anything bad to bash on this level for. I do like a lot of the design-based elements. The fact that we have some secrets, even though they're ridiculously easy, I don't feel they were as well designed as like episode 1. Episode 1 honestly had like some subtle nuances with secrets that made it feel like each secret was unique. Here it just all felt like, here's a giant block, here you go. It really felt like a real lack of variety here. And between that, the fact that it mattered that you have to take damage, which honestly is fine, but honestly leads to something that makes you feel like I'm being punished for something that really I don't have a chance to avoid. Mandatory damage is never really like a good thing. I mean, I guess it's fine because it heals you up afterwards, but honestly, just like how the E2M, what was it again? E2M6, I want to say is, no, E2M3, I think is. Oh boy, now I'm forgetting my numbers. No, E2M5. That's what I'm trying to think. E2M5, you're basically going up the tower, whatnot, the Wizard's Manse, and you basically have the Star Wars door. It locks you behind it, and it basically makes it mandatory that you lose some health, which feels punishing because there's no way to avoid it. Nothing you can do. You're basically forced to deal with losing health just to continue the mission. I just feel like at no point should you ever really be punished to do that because, one, how much health do you know you have at any given time? And two, it just feels wrong to make honestly, losing health feels like something that should punish the player because they did something wrong. If I'm losing health, I believe I'm making an error, that I'm making a mistake somewhere along the line. It means that I probably walked out in front of a shambler and got injured because I was being stupid. Or I fell down a thing that I probably could have found an easier way to get down. Or did something that I probably shouldn't have, but it allowed me to do it anyway. But it wasn't the best route to go. That's exactly the key here. There should have been like some secret way around it, or something of a more convenient nature that wasn't exactly the most direct route, like the most obvious route to find. It probably should have been like this was the obvious route, but then there'd be like another hidden route around it that wouldn't have taken any damage at all. Because like I said, at the end of the day, when I see like health, I see health as being something like a mistake counter. Almost if you're losing health, that means that you made a mistake somewhere. And if you make too many mistakes, you die. And that pretty much is exactly the thing. It's basically a balance of how well you're doing in the level. So you want to like keep it a certain distance or so, otherwise you get punished too much. I'm perfectly fine with I blended off something, fell into a slime, now I get punished for that. What I'm not really too fond of is when I have to run across the damaging floor in Doom, or where I have to swim down this long pipe here and I take a bunch of damage. Like I said, I like some of like the environment puzzles here. I like running across the ramp and having to time that. I honestly was happy with that type of architecture choice, and some of the little details like that were fine enough, but the by and far the biggest pain in the butt area of trying to deal with, swimming down an area and getting injured for the entire thing just feels wrong to me. I should be able to time my way through it and not get injured if I time it fast enough. That's exactly the thing. You have to move fast through it, but you shouldn't be able to drown if you're fast enough. It should be whereby you just would be about to get injured, and if you bump into anything, you start losing health. But if you time it right, you don't. Honestly, I feel like it was a bit unfair to the player to just kind of start injuring me for no reason. But that's exactly the thing. So it's a level that has some annoying frustrations in there. A level that's therefore not my favorite at all. Actually, I believe I probably said, for detailing wise and whatnot, and different like Google puzzles, it probably is better than E2M3. But one thing I also like about E2M3 is the better challenge of variety there we have, and the fact of the matter that we don't have such frustrating based things as this. The challenge there comes from actual challenge, and not because it's arbitrarily losing my health by punishing me for something I can't really avoid. There, it's something I could reasonably avoid. It's just something that really is hard to avoid because everything's surrounding you and trying to pound you into a pulp. So, honestly, at the end of the day, I prefer the fair route of like E2M3 versus the very unfair route of this. So, yeah, some people aren't going to have a problem with it, just like a lot of people enjoyed E2M5, the Wizard's Manse. But personally speaking, I'm just not a big fan of when the game decides, let's, take away a lot of the player's life and scare him into thinking he's going to die. Um, because honestly, it just feels very unfair to the player that it occurred when there was no way to avoid it. If there's by means a way to avoid it, give this to the player and punish them. But there has to be another way around, another route. And that's where I feel this level is lacking. Anyway, thank you very much all for watching. It has been the adventure, and I shall see you all next time.